All right. So this past week we spent living it up in the Caribbean for our honeymoon. We went to St. Lucia and had a great time for 6 days. We basically just went from the ocean to the pool to the restaurants. It was just a nice little break from everything, you know? But it was also a lot of travel time for us. We were coming from the West Coast, so it was about a 4.5 hour flight to the East Coast and then another 4.5 hour flight from there. And then once you get to the island, it's about an hour and a half drive to the opposite side of it. So it was kind of a lot. And surprisingly, it all went relatively smoothly and everything. But whenever we're traveling together, my wife and I seem to be very observant of the people around us. We love to people watch, and we love to point out kind of the idiots of society, you know, whether it be something they say or something they do. We always just share a look of disbelief together and then go back to our audiobook or music or whatever it is. But because there was just such an abundance of travel time and we both kind of wanted this trip to be centered around like relaxation and doing absolutely nothing, we noticed quite a lot. So today I'm sharing some of the most just out-of-pocket things that we noticed on our trip, and you can either agree with my judgmental view of the world and question the fate of humanity like I now do, or you can just call me out for being an asshole for pointing it all out. So it's going to be fun. First, let's start off at the airport. If you ever really want to see the status of how America is really doing, go sit at an airport for just a few hours. You will never have more just self-confidence and self-worth than when you're watching people at the airport. After a while, you just kind of start noticing a theme of people either just giving up completely or they're just so far in their own worlds, I guess, that they don't feel like the need to operate by society's basic rules. But I leave most airports thinking, you know what, you're doing okay, kid. If this is how other people are getting by, you're doing just fine. Especially because my birthday was during this trip, so I'm dangerously just close to my 30s, and I felt like I was a little bit more like introspective, let's call it, during like the time of my birthday. You're just like kind of think about where you are at in life, and yeah, compared to the vast majority of who I saw, I'm doing all right. But I think the craziest airport story from this trip was in the Miami airport. So getting to St. Lucia, we took the red eye from Las Vegas to Miami, and then we had about a 3-hour layover in Miami before we flew over to the island. And as we arrive in Miami, it's like 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 a.m. on the East Coast. We're tired, we're grumpy. We maybe had like 2 hours of like decent sleep, but we're making our way over to our new gate and sit down. And I noticed that flight that our new gate is at is going back to Las Vegas. And this is the same weekend as EDC, the Electric Daisy Carnival, one of the biggest annual music festivals of the year, and it tends to bring in quite the crowd, especially from Miami, apparently. So we're sitting there, and we notice just a handful of people that look like they could be attending the festival, and directly across from us, there's this one group of 3, and it appeared to be a young couple and then the guy's best friend. And you could tell this girl in this group is a little excited, right? She's all over her boyfriend. She's like, let's go get a drink. And this Pauly D type boyfriend fucking just starts yelling at her and calling her stupid. And it was like, no, I'm not going to get a drink right now. And we're just like, oof, you know, this is not a good look. And then the best friend steps in and is like, come on, I'll go get a drink with you. So they leave the Pauly D dude there. And all of a sudden, as this dude's just sitting by himself, he breaks out this fucking JBL speaker and starts playing this loud-ass EDM music for the entire gate to hear. And mind you, it's like, again, it's 5 a.m. our time, and we haven't really slept at all. And I will just never forget the look on my wife's face as she turns to me. She was just so fucking done. I mean, one, like to have the audacity to play the music out loud in an airport is one thing, but then two, to do it like this early is just another level of being oblivious. To try and fathom what this guy probably thinks about in one day would just be a trip to explore his mind. But as he's clearing people out of the gate. People are just like moving, sitting in different seats. Eventually his friends come back and they get him a drink despite his prior yelling. And the three of them just have a great fucking time. They party it up, music loud, until they get on that plane. And at one point, these other two girls roll up in some pretty crazy, just EDC bedazzled costumes that they've got on. And instead of sitting down, one of the girls decides it's the perfect time to practice some bandana spinning to this EDM music because it's so loud. So she's dancing and spinning this big bandana on one finger, and like she's like passing it around above her head and behind her back, and she's dancing around. And she was honestly really good at it. Like, I'm not like do you, right? But it was just odd. It's not something you tend to see every day, especially at 5 a.m. And honestly, I didn't really mind her as much because she was quiet and keeping to herself. But man, was it distracting. And like, because all you can fucking do at an airport is sit there because you're trying to like save your phone battery. So you're just like this. And we were just like fucking like, you cannot not side eye this girl the entire time. So it was just weird. Some EDM people out there are just a special breed of human, and if you get to experience them, you're incredibly lucky. Anyways, then once you're on the plane, this is where the real fun just really begins. Random people just all like packed in together, just stressed, tired, on edge. Like, this is why you see those videos of people just losing it on planes. They just get so worked up that they eventually just snap. And thankfully nothing like that happened on our trip, but there were a few things where we were just like, what the fuck is this person thinking? You know, like, what's going through their mind? First, we have to talk about the airplane bathroom. Everyone gets so stressed about the bathroom situation, me included. All eyes are on you. Someone on the plane could be like timing you, for example. I always feel like it's tight. It's like in a cramped space. You have to make this walk of shame back to your seat. You're trying to like avoid eye contact with people. I try to be very mindful of all this. I'm out of my seat and then back in it within like 2 minutes flat. For me, there's no dilly-dallying whatsoever. But other people just don't seem to mind standing up there at all. They're just hanging out. They're just waiting in line for the bathroom, talking to the stewardess. They just act like they own the goddamn plane, and it absolutely just infuriates me. Like, there was this one guy who, whenever the fasten seatbelt sign got turned on, meaning sit the fuck down, right, his ass would pop right up, go to the bathroom, and then start stretching for like 5 minutes at the front of the plane. And while he's doing this, he's facing the entire cabin, and he's making direct eye contact with each and every person. So he's like this, and then like staring people down, and he's just like kind of just like surveying the whole crowd. And you know, it's just like, what weird fucking behavior. And he's looking at you, and I'm just like what, you know, like, what do you want? Sit down. But I don't know, it just really bugged me. Maybe I just have a problem with people who like create a spectacle out of themselves, I guess. I don't know what it was, but man, did it annoy the crap out of me. There was one guy sitting across from us on this one other flight, and he seemed to really bother my wife because while I'm sleeping, she decides it is absolutely crucial to nudge me and then point out that this man has been violently digging in his nose for the entire flight. She was like, she nudges me and she's like, look over there. He's been picking his nose the entire flight. And she was just disgusted. And I'm like a little discombobulated, right? And I'm like, I'm more upset at the fact that like, this is why you woke me up. Like, I couldn't miss this, right? And she claimed she didn't know I was sleeping, but I think she knew. I don't know. But she just couldn't take it anymore. And after hours of watching someone in close proximity just pick their nose, like, you may feel the need to tell someone. And this setting just brings out the worst in people. Now, the hotel we stayed at was an all-inclusive. And for the most part, like, you're staying on the resort for a large majority of the trip, right? This was my first, like, all-inclusive kind of experience, but I noticed you get a large kind of variety of people at these things. You've got retirees celebrating anniversaries, younger newlyweds, family reunion groups. It's just a good, solid like group mix of people. But the specific resort that we chose was more of like the laid back one. There was one that was more suited to like a younger nightlife crowd, but we opted out of that and we were like, bring on just like this calmer kind of relaxed group of people. So as we're sitting by the pool one day, there's another like younger couple that decides to sit next to us, and they're being just like pretty fucking loud, you know, just talking on the phone a lot, stuff like that. And the average age around us is probably like mid 60s. So they're not really helping us out being of this younger generation. They're kind of like painting a bad picture for us in this kind of like side of the pool. And at one point, I leave to order some food, and by the time I come back, I notice they're gone, and my wife tells me that the young guy jumped in and did a cannonball and scared the shit out of all of the old people. And this pool was just not a cannonball pool, right? It's shallow, it's quiet, it's kind of like tucked away in the back of the resort, like where there's like another louder pool up front with a DJ, but this pool was made for relaxation. So after we eat, my wife and I, at one point, we like get back in the pool, right? And this fucking old bitch sitting close by looks at me and says, "Are you gonna jump in again and scare the crap out of me?" And like she thought it was me who did it the first time, and I'm super quick to like defend myself. But I was like, "What the hell, man?" Now I'm just getting wrapped in it with this guy, you know? Like that wasn't fair. But eventually they come back and start annoying everyone again, thank God, to save my pool reputation. So yeah, that was super annoying. But because we're fairly private, introverted people, right, we try to avoid talking to random people for the most part. We're not like rude or anything if someone like strikes up a conversation with us, but we're just not actively seeking out conversation. And when you go on vacation, I think you should expect just a certain level of random conversations among strangers that is like bound to happen, right? You got people sitting next to you, bartenders, Uber drivers, things like that. But there was this one day where we went on this little snorkeling expedition, and there's like 12 to 15 of us tourists on this boat, right? And my wife is sitting next to this bigger, like older, louder couple from Tennessee, and they're nice and everything. They're talkative, but not like too horrible. But as we're sitting there waiting for the boat to leave the dock, I noticed there's construction being done to a building just off in the distance there, not too far away. And St. Lucia is very much a developing country. So think of like every OSHA violation imaginable. It was just stressing me out. You've got these guys stories high, just leaning over the edge balancing on beams, hanging on with one hand. And there was this one guy that was basically like swinging around in this metal cage. It was crazy. It was not safe at all. And I pointed out to my wife, and we're having a conversation about it. And the Tennessee guy notices like we're talking about it. And he says, "Good thing they don't need to wear hard hats with all that cushion on top." And we're like, "What?" And he goes, "You know, all them dreadlocks." And we're both just like, oh, like that was an out-of-pocket, crazy-ass thing to say. And, like, what do you respond to that, right? And then the rest of the boat, he's going like, "Yeah, man, yeah, man." And we're both just like, man, like, this is why we don't have conversations with people. Just, like, read the boat, you know? But probably the most awkward encounter we had on our trip was with this photographer. We're at dinner one night, and the resort photographer, like, takes our picture at dinner, and then he asks if we've booked our complimentary photo shoot yet. I say no, but I get like wrapped into scheduling one because I feel bad for this guy. He's like putting on a little sales pitch. And this guy's just out here trying to do his job, right? So he gets out his little notebook and he gets us scheduled for the next day and then goes on and leaves to the next couple. But as he leaves, I apologize to my wife, but I'm like, you know, maybe some professional pictures of us will be nice together, right? We've barely taken any photos so far of us this trip, and our parents will probably want to see him. So the next day we get all ready, and my wife puts on a full face of makeup. We get down to meet this guy, and he has just no recollection of us whatsoever. He's flipping through his notebook, and he's asking us for like the room number again, and we're like, it was 213. It was the number, and he's like, what? We're like 2 213. He's like, oh, 323. And we're like, no, 213. And he's like, oh, 436. And it was just so odd. We were like, I didn't know if he was like playing a joke or something, because he seemed to have understand like everything else that we were talking about. He spoke perfect English. There was like no other miscommunication besides the whole room thing and the fact that he didn't even realize he scheduled us, I guess. But anyways, he finds us in his notes and he treks us around to, I kid you not, like 3 to 4 of the most just public settings on this resort. And there are just tons of people just staring at us the whole trip as we're holding kisses in these photos for like 60 plus seconds. And one location, we just straight up, I had to tell him no. There were like 30 people like sitting down for dinner and we were in their direct line of sight. I just told him that my wife has social anxiety, and he had no idea what this was, right? He's never heard of social anxiety before in his life. But yeah, just a really odd guy, especially because most photographers that I know are like really good at small talk. You know, like the goal is to make you feel as comfortable and relaxed as possible so that you take a good picture. But this guy had the exact opposite game plan. He kept calling her by the wrong name, like multiple times, not even close to. But yeah, long story short, we go to see our photos the very next day, only to find out they cost a couple $100 for a few digital selects. So yeah, my cheap ass was not about to pay that out, especially because we haven't even really like even printed out our wedding photos yet. But yeah, that was a whole big ordeal. But despite my complaining, it was a very nice little getaway, you know, with our upcoming move happening within the next couple weeks and just a lot of additional change just right around the corner. It was nice just to take a minute to relax, sleep, spend some quality time together, you know. So don't forget to take your vacations. Personally, vacation kind of stressed me out because you have to initially like do so much to make sure all the work gets done in advance and everything's taken care of and while you're away. And then you like tire yourself out even more going on these extended like traveling expeditions. Like we didn't need to go 11 hours, but we chose to do that. But then once you arrive and settle in, you know, it's very nice. It's very enjoyable. So vacation is good. Go on your vacations. Yeah, have a great Memorial Day weekend. Maybe you'll make some vacation stories of your own. I appreciate you listening, and yeah, I'll talk to you next week.